Mayor Berry's final State of the City address on Monday began by focusing on the positive. Mayor Berry said that the city's next mayor will inherit an economy that is, quote, on the rise, end quote. Also, a government that ranked 6th in the nation for use of technology and city services that are some of the best in the country. But the FBI's new crime in the United States report, also released on Monday, showed that Albuquerque had a disproportionate increase in property crime, violent crime, and murders between 2015 and 2016. The new mayor will also inherit that problem as well. Now, here with me to discuss this topic are this week's Line Opinion panelists. Attorney Sophie Martin is with us. Former New Mexico House Minority Whip Daniel Foley is here. Tom Garrity from the Garrity Group PR. And Mary Huditz, a reporter for the Associated Press and the CJ Project, a criminal justice reporting initiative. Welcome to you all. Sophie, I'm going to start with you on this one. Mayor Berry seems to blame the crime problem on, we hear this a lot, the forced reduction in jail populations in the DA's office. We'll get the DA's office in a quick second. He had some numbers out there about this forced release bit. Let's get in that a little bit. Is that the reason crime is where it's at?
No, because the crime issues started before the program, before the change in our Constitution that ensures or seeks to ensure that people aren't kept in prison just because they can't afford bail.
That's right.
And that also gives judges the opportunity to keep truly serious violent offenders in jail.
That's right.
I think that it's natural that there are growing pains, but I also think it's unfortunate when someone like the mayor points to a program like this as the cause when the effect started before the cause came into play.
Yeah.
You know, the one thing that I heard from him that I thought was encouraging was the discussion of the underfunding of our prosecutors here in Albuquerque and New Mexico, frankly, across the state. I wish he had also mentioned, because this is an important part of the equation, our public defenders are extremely underfunded, our civil legal services are underfunded, and our courts have been starved for a very long time. And while this is not the only issue, I think frankly, the economy, the very low numbers of police officers, the very high time that it takes when you call 911, the response times are terrible. And we all know it, right? We see drivers on the 40 and on the 25 who know they're not going to get pulled over.
That's right.
We see people stealing cars, engaging in other types of property crime who know it's going to be a long time before those police officers ever show up.
That's right.
And when you have an alarm in your house, you think, wow, I hope the alarm scares them off, because I know that it's not going to be the squad cars arriving on my block. So it's not just that people are being let out, it's that there is very little police presence in this town. I cannot believe I'm saying, of all things I'm saying, I think we need more police. I guess I've been saying it for a while.
Well, 850 officers is not going to get it done.
He's right. He's right that we need
that.
services. We need services for individuals who are released from prison. We need all of these things and more. However, he is a member of the party that is not interested in paying for those things.
Right.
So how's it going to work? This is the first time that this mayor has ever suggested that we need an increase in budget for these organizations.
That's a good point. And, you know, on the heels of this also, go with what Sophie just said, Tom, and other things, the mayor's approval rating has taken a wicked knock, as they say. He's down to like Donald Trump numbers now, like 35%. Below Trump, actually. Thank you, Dan, for mentioning that. That's pretty harsh. But there's a feeling out there that time heals, all that kind of thing. We've seen some print people talk about that kind of thing. What do you make of that? Legacies are difficult that way. It's tricky.
Legacies of mayors are very difficult.
Right.
Luis Saavedra, Jim Baca, Mayor Chavez, all had successful careers afterwards. But you know, I don't think anybody looks back and says, "Wow, those were the good old days."
Right.
And stuff. And that's with all due respect, because, you know, I mean, being mayor is a very difficult job, and it's why, you know, not a whole lot of people want to run for it. To follow up on Sophie's point, though, I don't think, you know, the release of the 2,000 inmates exacerbated an existing issue of crime.
Certainly true.
The key issue there, though, in my opinion, is that there were no support services to really help out, because right now at MDC and, you know, throughout our correctional system, you have the best behavioral health services in the state. That are available to, you know, inmates of you know, MDC, and when they get released, that support system isn't there. And I think we've talked about before, we can very easily point the finger as to the reason why. But so I think that definitely exacerbated the issue. You know, as far as, you know, what does he do? I think his messaging, the mayor's messaging, was good. You know, he talked about, you know, paving the way for success for the future mayor, whoever that might be. So I like that messaging, but I don't think the rest of it. I think the rest of it was blue smoke and mirrors.
Well, let me stay with you a quick second on your opinion about. I mean, there are some things to build here. If you think about what the mayor's done over the last 8 years, infrastructure, but especially if there's one thing a mayor can do and must do is be the best cheerleader for a city in that city.
Yeah,
has he done a good job at that?
I think he's done a fantastic job.
Yeah.
You know, he's done TED Talks about heading home.
That's right.
ABQID, I think, is a great success story. Gary Opedal, one of the best economic development folks that we've had in that position. I think there's a great legacy. The problem is that those are the long-term plays.
That's right.
Everybody says we're doing the Boulder model, but the Boulder model took 10, 20 years to develop.
That's right.
And we needed solutions right away. So I think that the mayor has a lot of things he can hang his hat on. He has some great successes, but he also has a lot of great criticisms and failures as well.
That's right. Mary, interestingly, the mayor had made a big deal about running City Hall more like a business than a government entity, and he had sent, if I'm not mistaken, his people through training, business training, on how to do all kinds of different things. And in his speech, he mentioned there's a more efficient government being left. Does that really turn people on about an efficient government as a legacy? Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's sort of inside baseball stuff that people, they just expect stuff to get done. They're not going to throw rose petals just because he gets stuff done.
Yeah, I think people are the people who are super engaged, they may or may not be turned on by that.
Right.
But, I think what people, especially when it comes to city government, are aware of are their own lives and how are they faring in this city.
Sure.
And then that reflects on how they feel about the mayor
Right.
or the city itself and the state of it.
That's right.
And
That's right.
so we're seeing low numbers. I don't know what that says.
And you think about a mayor, again, another peg the mayor can be judged by, or any mayor, is hirings. The people you hire, your department heads, all that kind of thing. Where do you think that's all shook out after 7 some odd years now? Was the team the right team for the mayor? Did they get stuff done here in your view?
They had some big challenges.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, he certainly thinks so. There was lots of shout outs and thank yous
That's
to, especially noted the younger, what he felt like the younger staffers.
Right.
But did they get things done? I think he leaves with people focused on crime and wondering,
Right.
There's still a police shortage. That was something to get done or to make some more progress on. He'll leave without art being completed. And so, on track, but still,
That's right.
who's to know what his legacy will be?
I'm going to put on track in finger quotes here because, Dan, we've got a deadline on art. We've got a deadline coming up on Saturday on this federal money for, it's either going to come or it's not. And there's betting money out there that it's not going to come. So the next mayor is going to be $69 million in the hole for this art thing right off the bat.
Well, they're going to
if
take
it
a job
doesn't-
with holes in the ground. I mean, it's not like they're going to be $69 million in the hole and
Right.
we've got this thing up and running. They're going to be $69 million in the hole and it's kind of a quarter of the way done.
Right.
I think the thing that's hurt Mayor Berry is obviously the crime. I mean, we've said this before that had he tried to pass this off to the former mayor, and to some extent this existed prior. I get that, but after 8 years, it's hard to blame somebody else.
That's right.
I think people also, part of the reason that his numbers have plummeted is when you run a campaign, sending out your opponent's picture on a trolley and saying you're not going to do that, and then you are overseeing one of the largest boondoggles in the history of the city of Albuquerque. I think it's hard that people don't forget that. And we got to remember, this art thing has really, it's not just affected Central, it's affected a whole bunch of Albuquerque. I mean,
right.
everybody's trying to go different places.
Silver is now
I
forever
think
changed.
that RJ, and I've known RJ a very long time, and there's no doubt that RJ's a nice guy. I think RJ thought that he could be a nice guy and be the mayor. And I think if you're going to be the mayor of a city like Albuquerque, you got to be a tough guy.
Okay.
You can't be a nice guy. You got to make some tough decisions. And RJ doesn't like making those kinds of decisions. And I think that he kind of ignored this, Department of Justice information. He should have been out in front of that. He had an opportunity early on to say, you know what, the DOJ is sniffing around the door here, and I'm going to run out front and say, I'm asking them to come in,
Right.
or I'm doing this based on the former actions of the mayor and his administration, but he didn't. He kind of sat back and let this kind of create a life of its own. Has he done some good things? Clearly. I mean, GRT, gross receipts taxes up, construction's up, but also when he became mayor, as my football coach used to say, when you're on your back, everything's up from there.
right.
So, I think, he did do some things right. He did engage young people. He did bring some younger folks. He took a lot of hits from a lot of conservatives because he hired a lot of Democrats. He kind of looked around this deal and hired a lot of folks to work for him that crossed party lines, which a lot of people don't do.
That's right.
But I think time does heal. People always get better with age, and what they've done always seems to be. But I think mayors have a very small window, like we were joking about earlier. By the time the 2 years of the next mayor is going on,
That's right.
I doubt we're going to be touting whoever the next mayor is doing a great job. We're going to be pissed off at them.
Right.
And so we forget why we were mad at the other
That's
people.
right.
That mayor
just
position
goes
seems
on.
to be a thankless position.
That's right. Sylvia, interestingly, I hearing all you guys talk about this, I can't help but think, are we being just a touch unfair, not we at this table, but as a city, a touch unfair here when I see these polling numbers? This is a very difficult situation he walked into. When you think about a mayor coming into a financial situation in a city that was not on anyone's upward trend at all, should he not get some more credit than he's actually getting?
We're talking about a mayor who made the decision, even when he had funds, not to fill city positions.
Right.
And my sense is it was in order to look conservative in terms of his spending. That hurt our city because we had so many city employees. At the same time, we were hurt when the state wasn't doing hiring. His investment in infrastructure feels too little, too late.
Okay.
And he never addressed the issue of Gordon Eden, why can't I even say, is that
The
right?
chief.
The
Chief
chief,
of
right.
police, that's right.
He
glad you
never
brought that
addressed
up,
that.
yeah.
And we knew when he was elected there was a problem
That's
there.
right.
And he's just kind of gotten along to get along. And the other thing I will say is this. When times have been hard in this city, the call has gone out, where is our mayor? He has been physically not present. For shootings, for other announcements, he has been gone.
Art. People say he wasn't there.
That's
about
right.
art.
That's right. And so, it may be that behind the scenes he's putting in tremendous work, but we are not seeing it on the outside.
It's part of the
And
stagecraft of the
people in
job.
Albuquerque
That's
have
right.
been
I
hurt.
think he also did a bad job
Yeah.
of drawing a distinction between himself and the city council. I think his nice guy, I can work with everybody. At some point you got to say, listen, before you blame me for that, I went to these knuckleheads and they said no.
Right.
And he wouldn't do that. He
Right.
just kind of, when the going got tough, he kind of walked into the background, let the city councilors do their thing. When they were together, he wanted to come forward and say we're together. But I think, even though we say we don't like this stuff, people want to see that battle in politics. They want to see, they want to be able to figure out who's on what side. And I think he kind of went through his mayoral time as kind of everything to everybody, and people are just kind of like, I'm not sure who's on what side.
Interesting point there. Mary, I'm wondering, it's a nonpartisan position, allegedly, but we know what's going on here, and I have to think that, for the Republican Party, there's something to be able to say here about the mayor's performance. Do you know what I mean? There's something positive. You really kind of root under this if you're a Republican, it would seem to me. Is there a balance as you view this whole thing for the party, so to speak?
Well, the fact that they took the position, and I think he was elected in the Obama era.
That's right.
But that's hard to say now.
Right.
I would think because like we said, like his poll numbers are not high. I think a lot of candidates that are running for mayor now are running as the change
That's right.
candidate and
That's right.
the one who's going to save the city.
Yep.
So I don't know. I can't get.
It's tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is tricky.
The party doesn't
Yeah.
see much because, as a Republican,
Yeah.
as a mayor, he didn't do much for the party.
Okay.
Did he get involved in city council? Did he get involved in legislative races? Did he get involved in Congress? He didn't. And you go to these other cities and you see in big major cities, R.J. Berry effectively is the head of the largest city with the base of the media focused right here. He should have been able to make an impact in and a former legislator.
Right.
You should have been able to call him into Roswell and have him come down and people say, that's the mayor of Albuquerque. And he couldn't even make a difference in legislative races in Albuquerque.
That's a good
Well,
point.
and
Yeah.
I just want to be able to say, I think one reason that his poll numbers are down is because it is campaign season. And, for amongst the 8 leading candidates who are running for mayor, the goal is tell them what's wrong and tell them who's to blame.
That's right.
And so when all you're hearing is see how bad things are, that's going to impact
Yep.
perception. I think he was the best person for the job at the time. And
okay.
But it's time for a different transition. He realizes that, the city realizes that,
Right.
but I wouldn't say that just because his approval numbers have plummeted, that's entirely his fault. I think a lot of it has to do with the campaign cycle as well.
Fair enough. There you go. When the line comes back, we'll look at New Mexico's laws against distracted driving and if they actually work.